Welcome to the Procurement Pulse, where we seek to demystify the practice of public procurement and simplify procurement for the average user. Today we have an exciting guest, Mr. Andre Bennett. He is the head of procurement in Jamaica. He has a master's in procurement law, and he is our chief policymaker in Jamaica. And he has taken some time to join us today to just have a quick discussion about the practice of procurement and how it impacts suppliers and the whole economic space in Jamaica. Andre, welcome.
Thanks, Dwayne.
So, Andre, how long have you been practicing procurement?
Yeah, I started operational procurement in 2012. So that was my first exposure to the procurement space. So we're looking at about 12 years. In terms of government policy, I've been doing this since 2019. So about 7 years, including school, of operational work, and then 5 years now in policy making.
Oh. Over the years, you have been practicing procurement. What's one thing you have seen one myth that suppliers tend to have about public sector procurement?
Yeah, I think the biggest myth, and there are many, is that the government had already decided who was going to win the contract before even going out to market. I think maybe in the past that might have been the case, but public procurement systems in many senses are so transparent these days and built on these principles that are guaranteed and that are reinforced through the institutional arrangements that even if that happens, it's in the minority. Really and truly, people get an equal and fair shot. And so suppliers probably need to be less concerned about what people may have thought and more concerned about getting a good bid in so that they can earn a piece of the $3 billion pie, $3 billion US that we spend in public procurement each year.
$3 billion US dollars.
Billion US dollars.
Wow.
Somewhere close to 25% of GDP.
Wow. And this is Jamaica we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Wow. So I know over the years the government has really tried to build some policies around procurement, and there's a lot of laws and stuff that come out. What are some of the things happening recently that really, I know the act is out and, nobody's reading the act and everybody's afraid of what it means. And as you said, there's a lot of myth about suppliers. But how does these new regulations and the framework that is there really benefits a supplier?
I would say maybe in three ways. One, there is more certainty about what the law is and what the rules are. So prior to 2019, prior to the entry into force of the Public Procurement Act 2015 and the regulations, we operated on the basis of policy and handbooks that were derived from other pieces of legislation. But now we have a single set of legislative instruments that deal with public procurement in particular. And they enunciate a clear legal framework that anyone can follow. An interesting thing is that much of the practice in Jamaica is built on international practice. So you might be aware that several of the methods and so on that we use are derived from the United Nations Model on Public Procurement, which is used by another 30 countries or so as the basis of their legal system.
So this is not unique. So what we have done in Jamaica is not just Jamaica get up and say, we're going to just write this and just pull it out of thin air, really.
Right. No, absolutely. It is consistent with international practice. And the good thing about that, of course, is that as suppliers look to other jurisdictions to participate in their procurement, their government procurement opportunities, they would already be familiar with the methods and the approach because so many countries use the UNCITRAL model law. So whenever we're doing RFQ or RFP or ITB, it's basically the same approach. I would say that's a benefit. There's certainty. I guess another benefit is now suppliers have a right to reconsideration and review, a right that they did not have before. So during standstill, which is that period of time before the government actually awards the contract, the supplier gets an opportunity to challenge the exercise of the government's discretion and say, hold on, you got this wrong. In fact, I am supposed to be awarded the contract.
So that is good enough, but isn't that the same thing the minister the other day said there were some questions about the standstill? Because it would be good if, as a supplier, you can say, something happens and there's that space to say, I want to challenge this award that you're about to make. But is it that we're now making a shift in our policy to say we're not going to go down that road anymore, or it is going to be replaced by something else?
Yeah, so I'm glad you give me the opportunity to clarify that. What we're really doing is removing the requirement for standstill for the very small contracts.
Oh.
Yeah, so the thinking is that in order to increase efficiency, it's a mixed bag. And we can probably get to that in the discussion later. There are lots of objectives that we're trying to achieve all at the same time. Included in that is transactional efficiency. And that is the imperative of government to get things done quickly. Time is money.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we looked at it, we thought that, well, it's not practical to entertain a lot of administrative challenges for very small contracts that are not very risky or complex. And, the benefit to government of being able to get those through quickly is that it opens up time to focus on the larger contracts that are more consequential. So we're just removing it from very small valued contracts. Right now, even a contract for $10 is subject to standstill, right?
$10.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we're removing it from the very small contracts. I mean, details will emerge after the legislative changes are made. So, yeah, the supplier gets a right to challenge. The supplier is very certain about what the legal framework is and where to find it. And I guess a third thing is that there is greater transparency and accountability on the part of government actors that's wrought by the law.
Wow.
One of the things that suppliers should be interested to know is that if a procurement officer or, say, a head of entity, pursuant to Section 26 of the Act, chooses a method of procurement that it is discovered afterwards resulted in loss to the government, the officer can be surcharged the value of the loss. So if the officer chose single source procurement or chose to restrict competition, and it was proven afterwards that, in fact, if there was competition, the government would have gotten a better deal, the officer could be made to pay the difference.
Wow. So how can a supplier take advantage of, for example, how can I, as a supplier, take advantage of something like that? How would we even know that such a contract was done single source in the first place?
Yeah, good point. Well, there are two ways. One is that procuring entities are actually mandated once a contract is formed to publish a notice of contract award as pursuant to, I think, Section 42 or 43 of the Act. So that every time a contract is formed, the supplier is able to look in the papers or on GoJep to see the formation of that contract.
What is GoJep?
GoJep is the government's electronic procurement system, Government of Jamaica electronic procurement portal. And
so we do e-procurement in Jamaica?
Yeah, long time. From 2016, we've been doing e-procurement. As I say,
only the elites of suppliers are able to go on that system.
So why would you think so? Everybody is welcome. Last week I was with a group of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Well, not last week, earlier this week, in Mandeville, and one of the participants asked me, well, what are the requirements for participating in government procurement? I listed them, and she said, yes, but you also have to be a registered business, don't you? And I said, but no, you can actually be a sole practitioner, and participate in government procurement.
Meaning any single...
You can be a tradesman, a craftsman, as long as the government has a demand for the thing that you supply, whether it's a service or good.
How you know that they have a demand, though? Because I think a lot of small business don't know that there is a demand, and then there's the perception that the demand is manufactured in some cases. And in other cases, I've heard that the most used method of procurement in Jamaica is actually some kind of restriction where they directly invite persons. So how would the average man know that, there is that opportunity?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd say is the businessman has to seek out opportunities. Needs to make himself known to procuring entities or herself known to say, well, look, these are the things I offer, and to become sort of ingratiated in that procurement space. I'm not talking about making shady deals behind closed doors. I'm talking about marketing the business so that the procuring entity is aware of what you offer. But also, I was making mention of the fact that there is lots of data available on Gojek. Right. I need to double check if a supplier can see the list of contracts that are published. I think it's possible. Suppliers can demand information from procuring entities.
They can,
of course, as long as it's not confidential information.
Give me an example of something that would benefit a supplier that they could demand from a procuring
Give
entity.
me a list of contracts and their value over the last 3 years in this particular industry or for this particular goods.
Suppliers can do that?
Of course.
And so
public information, dude. It's not a sinister thing. It's public dealings. It's taxpayer dollars that's financing these contracts. You know what I mean? So there is a duty on procuring entities to ensure that certain information is kept confidential because you don't want to disclose a supplier's business secrets. But at the same time, there are certain facts about the formation of contracts that suppliers can have access to and that they can look back at to see, well, maybe this is an area that I can fill the gap.
Wow. I mean, that is interesting. But, I want to go back to something that you said where suppliers can market themselves to practitioners. How do they do that and not get entangled with the Integrity Commission or be seen as you're trying to overstep or unduly influence something in the future? And while we're looking at that, like, how does it benefit a supplier with the existence of Integrity Commission and PPC? Because Jamaica, from what I understand, has one of the most rigorous methods of supplier registration. How does that benefit the supply market overall?
Yeah, that's a lot of weighty issues in those two questions. Let me see if I can answer properly. Well, the first one is, how does a supplier sort of do what I suggested earlier? Make himself known or herself known without running afoul of the law. No, you sort of answered the question in your question. The issue is not a supplier introducing him or herself or itself to an entity. The issue is when, having submitted a bid, the supplier tries to influence the result for its benefit. That's the problem. I mean, how do people go about marketing their goods and services generally? They may take out advertisements in the press, or they may do fancy advertisements on television, including, lots of very expensive paid actors. They may make cold calls to businesses. They may do internet or social media marketing, etc. Bring the attention of your business to the government. The government is spending more doing than everybody else combined in this country. The government is the largest spender.
You said what, 35
billion? 25% of GDP, roughly, yeah.
But here's a question. So in the private sector world, there are different times of the year that you may do a little package and send to some of your key persons, and oftentimes the year practitioners say, well, we're not allowed to receive gifts. Now, we don't see it as just gift giving. If you're looking at it from the supplier side, it is seen as a way to market your business, in the sense that you're now sending different tokens to different places that you would have done business with over the years. I mean, in some cases, just as a thank you to say, we have done well, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to participate. And we know it's a job, but here's a token. And by the way, here's a little booklet of some other things that you do embedded in it. Here's a little desk thing that you can put in your desk so we remain top of mind. Here's a calendar, etc. But oftentimes it is frowned upon that they don't receive gifts, and there are some persons that have a hands-off approach when dealing with the suppliers. How do you balance all of that?
Yeah. We exist in such a low trust environment in this country, whether in public procurement or elsewhere. The assumption is that when somebody acts in a particular way, it is with an ulterior motive, that they're looking for some kind of extraordinary benefit to which they're not entitled. And the low trust manifests itself even in the way that the legislative framework has materialized, multiple levels of scrutiny and oversight which ultimately have an impact on the efficiency of the system. The point I'm making is that there is low trust. Well, first of all, when I talk to practitioners, I say to practitioners, so the suppliers are your friends, they're not your enemies. The idea of having suppliers at arm's length all the time and not really bringing them closer to your business is rubbish. The issue is that you're not allowed to give one supplier more information than you give to the others, because that will compromise equal treatment, which is one of the foundational principles. If everybody in a competition, they must start from the same place. Everybody must be able to hear the gun at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you trigger somebody before by giving them more information than everybody else, then that caught the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Bias.
That's the issue. The issue is not having them close. The issue is exceeding the boundaries of equality. So I'm saying there is a need for closer and better relationships between buyer and seller. In the private sector world, what private sector buyers tend to do is that they tend to identify or highlight a few suppliers that they hold close to them for their strategic items. When they analyze their demand, right? They say, hold on, this thing is very complex and it costs a lot of money. The suppliers of this need to be very close to us. These are strategic suppliers. Because if we don't have them close to us, and if they don't invest themselves and see themselves as a part of our business, when they're manufacturing these critical widgets, that will help our business to go and make money, then we have problems. There's nothing wrong with that. In the government space, we don't probably have the same pressures because we have a different ultimate aim. But at the same time, building and deepening supply relationship is extremely important. Now, I don't want to vary off topic too much. I mean, I would say in relation to gifts, given the low trust environment that we're in, stay away from gifts. I don't encourage it. I don't accept gifts. Just recently, a supplier, our Elevate conference, reached out and said, are you guys allowed to accept gifts? And I said, keep your gift. Just say thank you. We're good. But we don't need gifts to know who you are and what your business is about. And you know what I'm doing? A supplier also markets its business by doing well in every job. Timely communication, completing on time, submitting invoices on time, being generally helpful in the process of getting that particular project through. And you might find that supply is recommended over and over because sometimes government has needs for common goods and services. So you might call where you are, you might call another entity and say, hey, I see that you did this, etc. Who did you use?
Yeah.
And at top of mind for the practitioner in that entity is the person who did a good job. Maybe also top of mind is the person who did a poor job.
What would be some of the key things that a new entrant would need to be aware of where public procurement is? And new entrant, like, me just go register a business, and me know say, me see an opportunity and me say, all right, I wonder if I can do this. Or I don't even know that opportunity exists. But where would I go to find some of the laws that would govern and some of the things that would help me to really onboard into this big thing called government procurement and become a government contractor?
Yeah. So the laws and the regulations, etc., are available on the website of the Office of Public Procurement Policy, www.procureja.gov.jm. And that's a good place to start. There are other resources on it. It gives you a flavor of what government procurement is about, the objectives that we're pursuing, and how we tie those objectives to the ordinary, everyday man, The bidding document that you would access from GoJEP that we discussed about earlier, that will also give you lots of instructions about how to submit the bid, and certainly the definition of the subject matter would be included in those documents that you need to read and understand and make sure you submit a responsive bid. You can also find resources generally on YouTube, where people who have YouTube pages like yourself who might, from time to time give good tips about how to understand the bidding documents and what the government is actually looking to achieve by distributing them or by issuing them. You can Google generally about how to participate in government contracts. But one of the things that a new entrant needs to be mindful of is that maybe it doesn't have all the experience it needs. And so what's really, really good is if you participate with larger players in the industry and sort of become a subcontractor on some of their larger jobs. So you might find them at professional in professional networks, or you might find them in industry fairs, etc. And you go and you latch on to a bigger player who has been doing it for a while, and you say, "This is my business. It's a subset of what you do. Over the next couple of X period, I want to do work for you." Again, I was with some people in Mandeville last week, as I was telling you, and one of the MSMEs came to me and said, "Look, we've been doing work as subcontractors to a particular firm for the last X number of years. They've been doing island-wide work. A matter of fact, that big company has won almost every tender for that particular thing. So these guys were subcontractors to them to do it."
Wow.
And the man said to me now, "Yeah, we're tired of the subcontractor thing. We are now looking to go do our own. We are going to be bidding for the contract the next time."
So now you hear that they are now ready to take that leap and step out there because they have really gone ahead and participated actively in the practice of procurement with a bigger player, and now they're ready to really go out. And I guess that's one of the ways that new entrants can really get a hold of this whole practice of procurement and getting them foot wet. But then, that brings us to another question though. Where are, outside of the website that you just pointed out, what are some of the other resources that where can suppliers find some other resources to really help them to navigate and understand this whole thing about procurement?
The Chambers of Commerce. The Jamaica Chamber of Commerce has activities year to year concerning business and business development. Our office has participated in some of those. The Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, other similar professional groups, the Micro, Small and Medium-Sized Alliance, and Medium-Sized Enterprise Alliance, MSME Alliance. There are a whole heap of little groupings of people who can give you the information that you need, the Incorporated Master Builders Association for people in that space. There are quite a lot of ways that you can network with other people, and you can get information through those means because they put on symposia and they have fora to discuss government procurement. And I can tell you, as I say, we've been a part of many of those discussions over the years. I guess, as I said, another place would be to Google broadly and to sort of increase knowledge by doing research.